Does he stay or does he go? That is the question that people are asking about Jim Schwartz. But I think the question people should be asking is, should he stay or should he go? Because there's a lot to discuss with Jim Schwartz potentially either keeping his job as defensive coordinator or walking away. This is not one of those decisions that's simple, clear-cut, has no consequences to it, right? I think for a lot of people, Bubba Ventrone not being back, nobody's shedding a tear over that. That's been paying attention to the Cleveland Browns over the last couple of years, right? That's not a decision that we have to ponder or make a pros and cons video about. But Jim Schwartz is much different because Jim Schwartz's work in Cleveland has been largely good, and it's also been markedly better than what they had before in Joe Woods. Now, whether that's a result of just Joe Woods being extremely incompetent and Jim Schwartz showing you what simple competency can bring to a defense as talented as the Cleveland Browns is, or whether this is a demonstration of Jim Schwartz's genius, simplistic, but genius, right? That's the real question we have to ask. Should Jim Schwartz come back? Not will Jim Schwartz come back? Because right now, as it is, Jim Schwartz has no choice but to come back. He's under contract with the Cleveland Browns, I think until the end of 2026 or 2027, but he's under contract for at least one more year with the Cleveland Browns. He can't just leave unless he retires, and he might not want to just retire. So will he come back? It's not even a question of if he's going to come back because he's never left. He's been under contract this whole time. Should he come back? Well, that's the important question, and that's what we're going to get to the bottom of in this video. But first, I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. So it's Super Bowl week, and I think a fun thing to do with the Sleeper app would be to do at least 5 days of 5 different slips for picks on Sleeper. So every day you watch my channel, I'm going to be going over a different themed pick list that I have in for the Super Bowl. All right, so I wanted to start with something quarterback related to get the week off. So we're going to do just quarterback picks here today. I have a $5 pick in with a 30% boost on. And you can go, and I'm going Drake May, longest completion over 33.5 yards. I'm going to go also Drake May over 20 completions or 21 completions. I think that Sam Darnold will be under 29.5 passing attempts and over 6.5 rushing yards. If you want to join the fun, you can make sure you join it on Sleeper. Get a 100% match on up to $100 when you make your first time deposit using the promo code Worst Take. Make sure you use the promo code. Make sure you sign up so you can join the fun and make the Super Bowl even more exciting as you try to prove to your buddies you know more ball than them, and maybe even get a little bread on top of it. But thank you to Sleeper for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to it. So should Jim Schwartz come back, or should the Browns give Jim Schwartz the boot? That is the question. Let's start with the pros when it comes to Jim Schwartz, which there are many of, right? If you keep Jim Schwartz, you're also retaining an excellent support staff underneath Jim Schwartz that has proven itself to be great at developing young players. Like one of the things we pointed out when we were talking about why Kevin probably should get the boot at the end of the year is the clear difference in talent development that the defense has been able to do with similar resources to the offense. Now, obviously, the defense got more first-round picks, more second-round picks than the offense. And I think that's a big part of the talent discrepancy. But if you look at what the defense has been able to do with equivalent assets that the offense has been able to get, right? Third-round picks, fourth-round picks, fifth-round picks, sixth-round picks, undrafted guys, seventh-round guys, the defense has gotten significantly more out of even those assets than the offense. Jason Tarver has done an excellent job developing linebackers, getting Devin Bush from a prove-it deal to legitimately getting paid this offseason, right? JOK's game jumped exponentially once he really got working with Jason Tarver, and hopefully he can come back one day, but I don't know if that's going to happen. You look at somebody like Mahmoud Diabite, right, a UDFA who's become a starting linebacker under Jason Tarver. And then obviously the work that he did to not only identify, but to empower somebody like Carson Swessinger to the point where he was one of the best linebackers in football in his rookie year. You have those success stories at linebacker. You have guys like Ronnie Hickman who are UDFAs, who are now starting caliber safeties, how the Browns have figured out how to use Grant Delpit properly while Jim Schwartz has been here. Shout out to Ephraim, who has a great hold on that safety room and on that secondary in general. The work that they did with Tyson Campbell, right? Tyson Campbell came to Cleveland, played his best football. When the Browns traded Greg Newsome, he was playing his best football of the year. Like, think about that trade, and that's kind of a demonstration of just how good the support staff is underneath Jim Schwartz. You have excellent DB coaches, excellent safety coaches, excellent linebacker coaches, excellent defensive line coaches. You traded Greg Newsome. He played his best football in Cleveland, even after he got traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were supposed to be a better fit for him. And then you get Tyson Campbell, and Tyson Campbell plays significantly better in Cleveland than he did in Jacksonville. Just showing you that the Browns have a better grasp on how to put these players in positions of success on their defense than other teams, even teams that are much more successful when loss record-wise than the Cleveland Browns. So that is a huge plus. Keeping Jason Tarver, keeping Ephraim Banda, like these guys who have demonstrated themselves to be really strong coaches at their position, I think is really good. That leans into my second pro, continuity, right? It's always great to have continuity, especially when you're going through a head coaching change, and knowing that the strength of this team is going to still be on the same footing they've always been is a benefit. Now, I wonder how they're going to have to go about nerfing the defense during training camp, where they have a defense potentially in their fourth year going up against an offense with a new head coach and a new offensive system entirely, right? Like, that's not going to lead to great looking results in camp early on. That's just obvious math right there. But you have continuity on that side of the ball. Myles Garrett has been able to reach the peak of what's possible up to this point as an edge rusher with Jim Schwartz and his staff. So your best players are doing their best work. So again, the continuity is there, the success is there. On paper, keeping Jim Schwartz makes a ton of sense, right? That's not the issue. Jim Schwartz is good at his job. Even for people who want to act like he's not good at his job, he's good at his job. I'll defend Jim Schwartz's work from 2020 to 2025 all day long. He's good at his job. Well, not 2020. I don't know what he was doing in 2020, but 2023 to 2025 all day long. Some people argue that the product on the field at times demonstrates to be broken. I would argue against that, right? I think if you're going with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset, it makes sense on the field from the product on the field standpoint, right? People have their complaints. The play action seems to be a little bit more effective than it should be. Run defense has never really been a priority in the Jim Schwartz system. Years of weird home and away splits, and that infamous dud that they dropped in 2023 defensively in the playoffs. All legit concerns, but I do think that we aren't evaluating the whole part of the picture when it comes to those concerns, because most of the time when you look at those concerns, you see the offense is turning the ball over a ton, or the offense is completely inadequate, and that's leading to these gaps by the defense eventually because of exhaustion or just by the fact that the defense has to be perfect in order for the Browns to win a game, because the offense usually contributes nothing to the game. In reality, all defenses have bad games, bad halves, bad quarters, bad drives, no matter how great they are. I think you notice the Browns more because, one, if you're somebody watching this channel, you probably watch the Browns more than you watch any other team. So you're going to be more keen on what they're doing than what other teams are doing. But I'm sure if you watch the Seahawks or the Houston Texans, you would see times where the defense falters and kind of makes you a little bit nervous. But I think the second thing that's even more important is that because the offense is so terrible, the burden being put on the defense is so high that any gap in play can just completely end the game for the Cleveland Browns. And that's what you see as a fan. Oh, the defense didn't stop the run. They must be to blame for this loss. But when you look at it, it's like the offense was minus 34 in expected points in that game. Like, that's what the real issue was. Think about it like this. The Buffalo Bills game this year is a great example of what I'm talking about. The Bills ran for like 160 yards in the first half, and that was not great. But the Browns still had ample opportunity to win that game if the offense could muster up more than 3 points at the end, because the Browns shut down the Buffalo Bills for the entire fourth quarter. So as much as the defense wasn't good in the first half, they did what they needed to do to win. It wasn't a dominating performance, and nobody's going to put together 17 dominating performances in the season, but it was a performance that at the end of the day could have won the Browns the game if they could score more than 23 points. But the issue is that the Browns were incapable last year of scoring over more than 30 points without heavy assistance from the defense. Think about it like this. The Browns defense was plus 65 in expected points, which is third in the league. They had a 33.7 score percentage, which is the fifth best in the league. You have a third lowest passing yards allowed number, third least first downs allowed in the NFL. All of this while dealing with the offense that was one of the league's worst offense in the NFL. This led to the Browns the Browns defense playing the most drives any defense had played in the NFL, and also dealing with, because of poor special teams play, the worst average drive starting field position in the NFL. So the Browns were not only playing more drives than anybody, those drives were closer to scoring territory than anybody, but yet the Browns were fifth highest in score percentage. I can't speak to how impressive that is. I think that's one of the most impressive stats a defense can put together. Yes, it's cool to see the Seahawks, when they're playing in the Super Bowl, being able to do amazing shit. And when you see the Houston Texans in the playoffs, you think to yourself, those are better defenses than what the Browns have. But those defenses don't have to overcome nearly as much as the Cleveland Browns defenses had. And the Browns defense is putting up similar numbers, if not better numbers, than both of those defenses, despite dealing with more circumstance than anybody has had to deal with this year. Browns could be the best defense in the NFL. It's a matter of perception, and the reason the perception isn't there is because the offense has been by far the worst offense in the NFL. If the Browns had a mediocre offense last year, they would have probably made the playoffs. They could have probably won a playoff game, and they would have had the best defense in football and would have sent like 8 guys to the Pro Bowl on defense. That did not happen. The Browns were not just bad on offense. They weren't just not mediocre. They were the worst offensive team in a span of 2 years that we have seen in quite some time. That has led to disastrous results for the defense as far as their perception. Now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is something I've said. And look, if you heard the first part of this video, it might be really easy to jump on board with keeping Jim Schwartz. And look, on paper, in a vacuum, I got no problem. But this is not something that I'm really advocating that the Browns do. Honestly, it's something that I'm advocating that the Browns don't do. So why would that be the case, right? If Jim Schwartz is capable of creating something that I clearly think can be the best defense in the NFL, if this defense is top 5 already, despite what they've been dealing with, and you bring in Todd Monken to fix it, on paper, you have a guy on offense who has experience improving things, who will make the offense better. You got a guy on defense who's going to run the same great defense that you had last year, and that's going to be better. That's going to be exactly what this team needs on paper. But again, the question goes back to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the question is this broken off the field? Here's what I mean by that. Before this whole coaching search, I did not really think that Jim Schwartz was really interested in becoming a head coach again. So my assumption was, hey, he's not going to get the job, but he'd be okay with it because I don't think that's something that he'd been working for over the last couple of years. I thought Jim Schwartz was one of those guys like a Steve Spagnuolo who's completely okay with being a defensive coordinator, working in his niche, and thriving in that niche, right? That's what I thought Jim Schwartz was okay with being and what he wanted to be. But it has been made clear by Jim Schwartz's reaction that that's not what he's okay with being. That's not what he wants to be, and that he clearly aspires to be a head coach again. And that's what makes shit awkward when it comes to this, because it's not broken on the field. Jim Schwartz is a good coach, but it might be broken off the field, and that's unfortunate, right? Let's look at this from Jim Schwartz's perspective, right? He's been working his ass off with this defense. He produced a defense that probably should have been the best defense in the NFL last year. But because of other people not doing their job well, he did not get that praise that other defensive coordinators are getting. He's not getting the opportunity that other defensive coordinators are getting. But he thought to himself, maybe that work is going to be recognized in Cleveland, right? Like, I've been here. I've been doing the work. I've been working my ass off. I've been, shaking the right hands and making the right people think highly of me. And you think, when you're working as a defensive coordinator for a team that's not that good over the last 2 years and a team that's offensive play has really made you struggle over the last 2 years, the one thing that has really kept you going probably is the light at the end of the tunnel. And what we now know is that the light at the end of the tunnel for Jim Schwartz was being a head coach again, getting another opportunity to be a head coach again. Regardless of how you would have felt if Jim Schwartz would have gotten a head coach job, which me personally, I wouldn't have been a fan of, right? I'm not advocating that we should have gave the job to Jim Schwartz. But regardless of how you feel about Jim Schwartz getting the head coach job, there's no denying that when the Browns did not hire him, we took the light at the end of the tunnel away from Jim Schwartz. This thing that he had been working for, that he thought that he was going to get because internally they were going to recognize that he's been a great coordinator and all of that. And I think the reason this is kind of foolish on Jim Schwartz's part is because he's completely ignoring the fact that the reason they're looking for a new head coach is because the offense is terrible. They're going to have to address that. And Jim Schwartz's suggestions for offensive coordinators that's been leaked out there are very uninspiring. So, again, I'm not a fan of the Browns hiring Jim Schwartz. I think that's probably the worst thing the worst direction that they could have gone down. And it kind of leans towards, yeah, man, I wanted to fire Kevin, but if this is what you're going to do, then I wanted to keep Kevin. Todd Monken at least addresses the problem, right? So, again, I'm pro Todd Monken hire, but there's no denying the psychological damage that hiring Todd Monken has done to Jim Schwartz. And look, Jim Schwartz is a grown man. He's been in the NFL a lot. He'll probably get to a point to where he'll come back to work. That's not the question. I don't think Jim Schwartz is going to retire. I think if you force Jim Schwartz to work here, he'll work here. He'll finish out his contract in Cleveland. I don't deny that that's the case. And he'll be cordial and he'll be professional. But will he be the same Jim Schwartz that's been leading this defense since 2023? Think about it. What would you do if you were in his position at work? And this is not something that requires a great deal of imagination for most people watching this video. This is something that has happened to people who watch this video at their own job, right? Where you work your ass off, you think you're going to get this promotion, you think you're going to get this job, and then your job decides to give that job to somebody who hasn't even worked a day for that company that you've been working your ass off for the last 5 years. What does that do to your relationship with work? What does that do to your relationship with how you go about your work? Does that change your attitude? Do you stop doing the extra stuff? Some people do. I don't necessarily blame them for being that way. It's a heartbreaking thing to work really hard, put in the extra hours, sacrifice, do all the family crap that your corporation says that you should be doing, just in hopes of you getting a promotion, and then for them to say, no, we're going to go with somebody else. It's not really a statement on who they hired. That person might be more qualified than you and might be better for the job. But boy, does that have a fucking effect on your psyche. To expect anything different from Jim Schwartz is kind of ridiculous to me. Like, if you think that Jim Schwartz is going to come back out here after you took the light at the end of the tunnel away from him and be the same old Jim Schwartz, that is a level of naivete that I cannot get on board with. This is my fear with what the Browns might do, because this follows a pattern of things, of bad decisions the Browns make, specifically under Andrew Berry, right? The Jim Schwartz, in retaining him with Todd Monken, is a great ideal on paper. You can't beat the idea on paper. On paper, it makes a ton of sense. Jim Schwartz is an excellent defensive coordinator. Todd Monken is an excellent offensive mind. Both guys have tons of experience that they can collaborate with together. And hopefully the ideal is that you get a great defense the way that you had last year and you continue that continuity. Todd Monken improves the offense to, at least in year one, be mediocre. You win like 8 to 10 games and you feel a lot better about the direction of this team going forward after you do so. On paper, I get it. It's a great ideal on paper. But this has been an issue for the Browns. The Browns are attracted to ideas that sound great on paper, but boy, do you have questions about how they work in practice. And this one is no different. This one screams of, hey, you got to understand the people stuff before you even make a decision like this. And I really don't trust the Cleveland Browns, specifically Andrew Berry, with the people stuff. You want me to get somebody who can manage a salary cap? I'll get Andrew Berry. He's great at it, right? His drafting has been pretty good over the last couple of years. His contract negotiations, outside of obviously the Deshaun Watson one, which seems to be ownership-led, and his trade packages, right? Like, all this stuff has been pretty solid with Andrew Berry. He's really good at that stuff. But when it comes to the people stuff, there can be a bit of a problem there. This has been his biggest problem in Cleveland. It's why the Deshaun Watson stuff has just gone so awry. The Browns never stopped to think once about the people element of what he was accused of, how fans were going to react to him, and what kind of effect that was going to have on Deshaun Watson and his ability to play football. And obviously, while Jim Schwartz's situation is completely different than Deshaun Watson's, you do have to ask yourself, after all of this has gone down, how is this going to affect Jim Schwartz's ability to do his job? He's not saying he's going to be unprofessional, but is he going to be the same Jim Schwartz that we've expected over the last few years, when what's motivated that Jim Schwartz has been taken away from him and told that he's not going to get ever? I would imagine that affects things. And yeah, Jim's a professional. Jim's not naive. Jim wants to stay in the league, but Jim's a person. And every single person watching this video in that situation would have a hard fucking time going back to work and working just as hard as they did before when they get passed up on a promotion like that, whether it's deserved or not. So to expect that not to happen to Jim Schwartz, I think is kind of insane. And that's why I think it's time to just let it go. Hopefully maybe you promote somebody from within and you can retain some of the position coaches, because I do think there are a lot of guys here that you want to keep. But let's be real about the situation. This is not good, right? At worst, Jim Schwartz, at best, Jim Schwartz quiet quits, right? He just works through this year. He gets through it, and then he leaves at the end of the year. I think that's probably realistically the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that Jim Schwartz becomes the guy to go to when you have a problem with Todd Monken. And there becomes a rift of Monken guys and Schwartz guys, and then there's no unity in the building, and then you have to fire both of them, kind of like what happened with Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley, right? Remember that whole debacle that went down when there was like nobody really in charge? That could happen there. This does not have a lot of pathways, in my opinion, of ending well. And I don't think Andrew Berry and the Browns front office are very skilled at the people stuff, or skilled enough at the people stuff to be able to handle and identify this situation properly. I don't trust them to do it, right? I think they're bad at it. So if that's the case, I just cannot recommend that the Browns keep Jim Schwartz. I think they're better off looking for somebody else to run the defense. Maybe you take a step back this year defensively, but maybe you can get better with somebody who's a little bit more creative to work on this scheme. Because right now, it feels like a loose end that needs to be tied up, or at least that's what Jim Schwartz feels like, a loose end, a remnant of the last couple of years that is still going to stick there. Not saying it's a bad idea to keep a defensive coordinator from regime to regime, right? This happened with, ironically enough, Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta, where they kept the same defensive coordinator that Raheem Morris had. I don't think that's a bad idea, but that defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, did not threaten to quit. Jeff Ulbrich did not clear out his office when Kevin Stefanski was named as the head coach, or when he was notified that he wasn't going to be the head coach. Jeff Ulbrich seems to be okay with that move, and it doesn't seem to be something that has greatly affected his psyche. Jim Schwartz cleared out his office. He told people he quit. He was clearly affected by what was going on. Now, maybe Jim can find a new light at the end of the tunnel, and Jim can go back to being the old Jim, and that could happen, and the Browns defense can maintain that level of quality, and everything's going to be all great and smell fresh. But this is fucking Cleveland, man. We know that doesn't happen, okay? 1. And 2, boy, you're betting on a lot of things that don't usually happen in situations like this. Like, that is wild to me to expect that in any organization, by the way, not just Cleveland. I think this is a bad idea for those reasons. Football reasons, you got every single football reason in the books to do it. You got every people reason in the books to not do this. And I know how the Browns usually look at this. They don't usually care about the people stuff. They're not good at identifying the people stuff. And they might callously decide to force Jim Schwartz to coach this year, not care about the people stuff, and then be shocked by the consequences of that. And that could have a result that could end up getting Andrew Berry out the paint, which some people would be happy for, right? I think Andrew Berry has showed some potential as a general manager. And it's unfortunate that this continues to get in the way for him. But if he's not going to learn, he's not going to learn. That's my whole thing, right? I think this is a bad idea to keep Jim Schwartz. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Can you separate the people stuff from the work stuff? Is the work stuff so good that you're just going to be willing to ignore the people stuff? Or is the people stuff so glaring to you, right? When you put yourself in his shoes, is it so difficult to see yourself doing the same quality of job that you were doing previously that you don't think that he can? Because that's where I'm at. I just find it difficult, right? That he cared this much to clear out his office as he didn't get the head coach job to come back and be DC at the same fucking place. I find it difficult to believe that he's going to have the same motivation that he's had the last couple of years. And motivation matters. It matters for everybody. Can't just manifest it out of nothing. And that's my concern. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. You guys have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.